They've also done my work easier by giving an introduction somehow of our guest speaker. I will now like to ask Amy, our guest speaker, to address us. You can do so seated if you want, or you can stand. Okay.
Okay. Madam Speaker, thank you for your words and that excellent introduction. And I finally made it to Parliament. I met Ray when I was 15 years old, and I had left school after what we call JC, Standard 8, and I was going to go to Tech. I was at Tech when I was 15 and learning shorthand and typing, commerce and bookkeeping. And I don't know how it happened, but I got a job at the Food and Canning Workers Union. And I typed there, and there was this lady, Ray Alexander. And she was a very extraordinary and exceptional woman. I was already becoming involved with the Modern Youth Society, which we started together with Albie and Dennis Goldberg and others to get youth to come together, discuss political matters, and start to become involved in political activity. And this was 1948 and afterwards. But Ray ran the union. Nobody there knew that she was Mrs. Simons. And I must say that if ever there was a person who was fortunate to have a totally liberated husband as far as gender equality was concerned, it was Ray. Jack appreciated, understood, admired, and I think the children know what a role he played in their lives, because when Ray started to organize the workers in the food and canning industry, she had to spend many days, many nights away from home. They were out in Paarl and Worcester, and I think one also needs to understand that the work in the food and canning industry was seasonal. So sometimes for months there was no work at all. And so the workers were completely dependent on the farmers in the country areas, and then dependent on the people who started the food processing factories. And often there was no work at all. And they were really very, very poorly paid. And it wasn't uncommon, and if any of you come from farming zones and have spoken to your grandparents, when they used to pick the fruit here in the Western Cape, the payment was often a can of wine at the end of the row of the grape bushes, or this fruit or that fruit or whatever it was, or the vegetables. So to organize them wasn't easy. They were very, very vulnerable because they often lived on property belonging to the bosses, and they only worked in the factories when the fruit had been picked, and they could get regular work for a few months of the year. So it wasn't an easy way. And Ray, all her life, she spoke with a heavy Russian accent. And she understood the workers who spoke Afrikaans or Xhosa, and they understood her. And what I began to notice about her, she introduced me to coming out to Paarl every night with Nana, Liz Abrams, to give lectures to the workers at the factories in Paarl, or rather to the shop stewards, political education. And it wasn't long after that that the campaign for the Congress of the People and the Freedom Charter had started, and and history notes were written, which we went out with, and they concerned the country we live in, the world we live in, the country we live in, and the third lot was the need for change, and I think they were written by your father. And they were absolutely instrumental in galvanizing people and getting them to participate. What I began to find out was that Ray was such an extraordinary woman. I don't think it always made for the children not feeling a little bit resentful of the amount of energy, time, and times when Ray was away touring all over, visiting various branches. And I think, you know, it's understandable that there were times they felt quite resentful of it. But I would come to Ray's house and find her sitting there altering shirts and altering clothes for the workers of children who'd managed to get into a boarding school, and mostly they had to go to the Eastern Cape to do so. And Ray and Jack used to work their budget by what they could give away and educate children of workers. Ray said, I don't see why workers' children should not have the right to education. And many, many years later, met people in London. One of them was a surgeon, one of them was an economist, people who had, because of Ray, got to school and got a tertiary education, and, you know, and I thought it was unfortunate that very few of them became political activists, but still, I realized today that what she did, she said, why shouldn't these children have a chance? And that was how she conducted her life. And the way in which she ran the union, Ray was absolutely adamant that people had to account for money. That because the workers at the time I was there, they used to come to a kind of joint meeting once a month, and the shop stewards would bring along bags with the subs. There were no stop orders or anything like that. They were collected. And at that time, at the beginning, they were paying 1 shilling a week. Shilling was more or less 10 cents or 20 cents, not sure. Anyway, whatever. That was what the workers could afford. And there were times when some of the people actually stole some of the money. And Ray's method of dealing with it in the union was absolutely straightforward. It didn't matter if you were the chairman of the branch or the treasurer or the secretary or just an ordinary member. If money was stolen and it was found out, and in these close little circles it was usually found out, the person responsible had to acknowledge that they had taken money. And they had to sign a letter with the lawyer as to how they would pay it back, no matter how long it took. And this didn't matter if you were the secretary of the branch or just an ordinary member. And everybody in the union knew that this was the method that you deal with theft in the organization. And it was very, very important. The other thing about Ray is that she would never, ever speak to the bosses on her own. They would invite her to come and meet with their board, and that she should come on her own. She never went without representatives of the branch or the whole union or what the matter concerned. To work in a really honorable way like that, in those days, it was quite extraordinary. Of course, what has changed if people behave like some of the workers did We're not talking about collecting 1 shilling from every member per week. We're talking about millions and millions of taxpayers' money. But in those days, Ray educated the workers that the money for the union is sacrosanct. It is sacred. The workers can't afford it very well, and it's got to be used properly in the union and accounted for. The other thing Ray absolutely believed in was political education for workers. And I used to go with Ray, when Ray was banned, and after Becky was banned, Becky Lan, who took over from her, and then Liz Abrams became the secretary of the union. When she left town on Mondays to go home to Paarl from Cape Town, I used to go with her. And then she took me to a family who had been friends of Ray. And they took me in for the night. And then I would go and speak to shop stewards, and we'd have a sort of political class. And in the morning, I would come back at 5:30 or 6 in the morning with Nana and go to my work, and she would go to her office. Political education, Ray believed, was really very, very important. And a lot of people didn't even know that she was married to Jack, because it was an extraordinary relationship of 2 people who not only loved each other, but supported each other and had a common purpose in the way they wanted to live their life. As I say, and I will repeat it, it was sometimes tough on the kids. But I think with hindsight, you have been through all that and come to terms with it. Yeah. I'm not timing myself to speak for half an hour because I'm 84 now and I even forget the time. So I didn't look when I started. Okay.
Don't worry, you can continue.
But I want to tell you, okay, I'm going to tell you some stories about Ray that I experienced with her. You know, Ray had a very strong Latvian accent. And she could speak Russian, she could speak Yiddish. What else did your mother speak? Polish. And?
Latvian, German.
Yes, she was quite a linguist. But everything was with this very heavy accent from Eastern Europe. And then eventually Ray was elected to Parliament. After they kicked Sam Khan out, and was there someone between Ray and Sam Khan? No, I think the next one was Ray. They elected Ray as an African representative, and she came to Parliament to come in, and they wouldn't let her in. They turned her away. Yeah. She followed Sam Khan as an elected communist representative. But she didn't get inside. Sam got inside the door. He was in Parliament for a couple of years, very popular, brilliant speaker, but Ray didn't get in. But nonetheless, she had a very distinctive voice. And one day I get a phone call, and this accent, which I would recognize anywhere, says, "Be there." Be there? Be where? I haven't got an arrangement to see Ray. We were both banned. We weren't allowed to meet. Why is she using the phone? So I thought, well, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. I can't phone her. It's against the rules of underground work. So I just thought, well, there's nothing I can do. The next thing I hear, tap, tap, tap on my door, and there's Ray. What she meant by "be there" is stay there, I'm coming to see you. But I didn't get the message. The other thing thing I remember, she told me, she used to tell me a lot of stories of the past before my time, when she was very active in the Communist Party. And there was a comrade on the executive who was making a pass at her. Oh. So Ray went to the meeting of the committee, and she reported him. So I said, so what did they say, Ray? She said they just laughed. Anyway, I got a lot of political education through Ray. She certainly was an example. I don't think she was a saint, but I think it was tough on the kids because for Ray, the work in the union was absolutely sacred, had to be consistent, had to be honest, and the workers' lives were so tough and they were so exploited that this was her real calling in life. I don't think we meet many people like that now. And now you see, now I'm having a memory lapse. No, I'll tell you, no, I'm coming. I'm going to tell you the story that I've told so often I don't forget it. She was once telling me about early days in the struggle. And she happened to be in Johannesburg, and the garment workers were on strike. And I don't know which of these wonderful women, you know, these powerful women, Johanna Cornelius and the women of the Garment Workers Union in those early days. But they'd called a meeting on the steps of the City Hall, which was the general venue for meetings in Johannesburg in those days. And it was about a strike. And one of the shop stewards came to the microphone to speak. And all of a sudden, she says he threw up his arms and he collapsed. When the meeting was over, she went to whoever it was who had been speaking. She said, what happened? What happened to that man? Says the lady of the Garment Workers Union. We didn't want him talking to the workers. He was a scab. So I grabbed him from behind and twisted, and he fainted. So I'm looking at her with wide eyes. And then she leans forward, puts her hand on my arm, and looks me in the eyes and says with absolute seriousness, "Comrade, we must learn these weapons of struggle." And I left out a piece of the story, and it's just come back into my mind. Part of the story was, she says how shocked she was when she saw what the garment workers, women were doing to the scabs. But then she said it is 1930, I don't know what, and the workers are on strike, and the police were attacking the workers. This is in the Fulton Canning. And she and her sister Dora, they laid out 3 policemen by the same method. And that's when she said, "Comrade, we must learn these methods of strike." I don't know if I've done 30 minutes or not. If I haven't, forgive me. But I think it's very lovely that Ray is being honored here, and very, very well deserved. A most extraordinary woman who came from a foreign country, not speaking the language, and was able to make a contribution that is well remembered today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amy. I'm sure this last part of the story, it's something that we'd all remember, some lessons that we have to learn on how to deal with a problem. in a nice way where majority cannot even see. But that tactic work. I'm sure it can still work today. But thank you very much for bringing Murray into life. You've taken us through the journey to understand some of the things that we wouldn't read about in the books, about the real person whom you interacted with, about the family who you knew intimately, but also about an activist who was very committed and was able to sacrifice a lot, even family life, in order to make a difference in the lives of so many. Can we give Amy another round of applause? Amy, when you said you have a memory lapse, you reminded me of one of my friends who said the more we grow older, like a computer, people don't understand when the server is full, it takes time when you reboot because it has to get all the memory that you have stuffed in there. So don't worry, you were still getting that memory from the computer. Thank you very much. Don't worry, it was very good. We didn't even see that you missed anything. But thank you very much once again. Honorable Speaker, it's now your opportunity, or you will give it somewhere else, or it's on the side. There's something that I was told you have got a task that you have to perform in your capacity as the Speaker. Or Amy to Amy. A photo session.
It is. We have two figures, a man and a woman, on both sides of a beautiful little bowl with the logo of our parliament.
Which is?
Now, the logo of our parliament has a drum at the center, which was a method of communication of the olden days. And on top, you have our national flower, the protea, and then you have figures. Why you have these figures? These are people, because at the bottom is our constitution and the words, "We the people," which are the first words in our constitution. That's why you have these figures that are on both sides of the drum. So we hope, Amy, you will enjoy
Thank you. That's
this
very
gift
kind.
and remember us and remember this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Speaker. When you mentioned that Marie, while she was elected to Parliament and she never got in, I understood your first words when you said, "finally, in Parliament." Thank you very much, and I will now ask our chairperson of the Labour Portfolio Committee, Honorable Yengeni, to give a vote of thanks.